Welcome to Write Now Workshop Podcast, where you can write a book and change the world. I'm your host, Kitty Bucholtz, and this is episode 212, Moving from the Big Five to Indie, an interview with Roxanne St Claire, coming to you on Thursday, September 24th, 2020. I had so much fun talking to Rocki about publishing, writing, and growing your writing business. She is a fabulous wealth of information and a terrific resource. This might be an interview that you listen to more than once. You never know. There was one book, however, that Rocki and I were both like, yeah, the book that, what's the title? We couldn't remember any of it. And sure enough, it was on the bookshelf behind me. It is called The Naked Truth About Self-Publishing. So the first edition came out in 2013, and that's the paperback that I have. But it turns out that there was also a second edition that came out in 2015. And a few days ago, when I was getting this podcast ready, that book was free on Kindle. So if you go to Amazon and possibly the other stores, I don't know for sure. This was on Monday, so I have no idea if it's still free on Thursday or if it was just temporarily on sale and I happened to catch it on the right day. But check it out, The Naked Truth About Self-Publishing. I think there are 10 authors who have all had fabulous independent publishing careers. And they talk about all sorts of different pieces of the process, basically the process of building a business for yourself. Now, I believe that they are all located in the United States, so it is US-centric when it comes to like the kind of business that you might choose and ways that you would do your accounting and that sort of thing. But I think that you can still use, 95% of the information straight off the page, or taking the way that they're describing something that you would choose in the US and figuring out how you would choose it in the country that you live in. So for instance, I live in Sweden now. And so one of the options is sole proprietor, and in Sweden they have sole proprietor, etc. So there is a lot of crossover that I think will still be make the book completely fabulously helpful for you. Keep in mind, things change very fast in publishing, especially the last 20 years. They've been changing very quickly. So while the second edition came out in 2015, I'm sure that there is probably at least a couple of little things that are not quite the way that we would do things now in 2020. Maybe something big in it as well. I don't know. But just keep in mind, this is a really good book, a great resource because of how many people are bringing their successful careers and the information they've gathered from their careers, as well as the fact that several of the authors are giving you information that also came from their previous career. So one person used to be a CFO. So she's talking about business types and like the legal aspects, how you would formulate your company, form your company, that sort of thing, because she also used to be a CFO. So she has a lot of understanding of the business and financial arenas in business. I feel like I'm repeating myself there. Another person had a marketing career before she got into self-publishing. So she was able to bring that crossover of information to you. Anyway, great book. That's the one that Rocki and I were both talking about. Neither one of us could think of the name of the book. So there you go. I wanted to make sure I didn't forget to tell you. Check it out on your favorite e-reader, whichever store that you buy ebooks from, and see whether or not it's free on that store for you. The Naked Truth About Self-Publishing. And at the time that I bought the paperback version, the author name was The Indie Voice, and that's because there were 10 authors. But it's possible that the first author is the one that you will see when you're searching, so that you know, yes, this is the book. In this case, the first author listed is Jana de Leon. So Jana, and then last name is Deleon. Don't know if I'm saying her last name right, but anyway, so I had to tell you that. Also, finish your book, my intensive coaching program. We finished it. It went so well. I was so super excited for my students because they did such a great job. And I was just excited to be teaching it. I wanted to make sure that I only teach classes that I love to teach, that I'm so excited about, that I give you more time, more information, try to help you even more than what I promise, because you've had classes somewhere along the line, maybe a lot of them, where you're like, that teacher is okay, but they don't seem very passionate about the subject. Like maybe they're just tired of teaching. And I don't want to be that person. So if I can't be super excited about the class, like I'm just not going to host it until I'm super excited about it again. In this particular case, finish your book got me very, very excited to be helping people to finish their book. And so I'm going to hold it again. The next class will start on October 12th. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about it so you could decide whether or not this is possibly something for you. It's an 8-week class. We meet twice a week for teaching, Q&A, brainstorming, me bringing you a lot of information that is directly about how you can finish the book that you've started, or how you can best get a lot more done more quickly on a book that you're now starting. So I had one person who had been working on a fantasy novel for the last 22 years, and she finished it the last week of class. I just wanted to hug her, but I'm in another country and, we can't hug. But besides that, I was so excited for her. One of the other students, he started a second book of nonfiction, and due to COVID and kids at home and, just stuff, his goal was to write 2 chapters of the new nonfiction book during the 2-month period. He wrote 5 chapters. He was, I think, a little blown away at how well everything was coming together for him. And this is the kind of exciting response that I want to help you with. Now, it's not 100%, it's not guaranteed. It's based on so many factors. I mean, some people have more time because of this pandemic. Some people have less time. If we lock down again, you may end up with more or less time. One of my other students, she was unemployed and excited to start the class at the beginning, and then she picked up a job in the middle. And so she ended up being able to work on her book less, but still got far more done on it than she had been able to get done before, when it was just her and no reason to have any particular deadlines. You know how it is. I'm the same way. If I don't have some sort of even artificial deadline for myself, it could take me forever to finish a project. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to hold this program. So if you're interested in more information about the details, and also just to give you some tips, don't have to join the class. Just want to give you some tips that could help you to start, finish, publish your book. And keeping in mind, too, that the class is not aimed just at self-publishing your book, though in this last class, all of these people are more interested in self-publishing than traditional publishing. But I do give information, too, about things that you need to do if you're leaning towards the traditional publishing side. Like, these are some things that you need to work on to get ready for, ways that you can brainstorm and look for agents and publishing companies that publish the kind of work that you're doing, that sort of thing. So I do cover both sides, just so that everybody has an equal chance to make a decision that works for them at that time. But what I'm going to do is hold several webinars. So this is 100% free, about an hour. I'll explain the program, give you a lot of tips for things that you can do to start and finish your next book, or the book that you've been working on for a little while. And I really want to make sure that you feel like you know me, like I could really work with her. Like, she seems cool. I like her energy. I like her enthusiasm. I'm a big encourager. That's a huge part of just who I am as a person. And it's a big part of what works so well in this program, because, the times that you have people cheerleading for you and giving you solid advice, and then celebrating you when you take the advice and things work out. This is part of what I'm doing in this program, in the Finish Your Book program. So I want to explain about it and also give you tips, because if you're like, well, I want the tips, but this doesn't really sound like something that I would be interested in, then I still want you to have some ideas on how you can continue on your own. So I'm going to have probably 4 webinars over the next couple of weeks because the class again starts on Monday, October 12th. So the first one is actually going to be today. So if you're listening to this right when it comes out, this is Thursday, September 24th, and the first webinar will be at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. That's 3 p.m. in London and 4 p.m. here in Malmo where I live, and midnight in Sydney. So if you have time, you look at your watch and it's not that time yet, go on over to rightnowworkshop.com/webinar. And you can go ahead and sign up. You can sign up for the one today or any of the other ones that are listed there that are going to be coming up. The next one after that will be Tuesday the 29th. So that's next Tuesday. That one will be a little bit earlier so that I'm trying to make times that work out more or less for everybody wherever you are in the world. So on Tuesday, September 29th, it'll be at 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. in London, 2 p.m. in Sweden and that area of the country of the world, and 10 p.m. in Sydney. So that one I chose partially so that people in Australia wouldn't have to stay up until the middle of the night. And then there'll be some more. It'll all be listed out on rightnowworkshop.com/webinar. So feel free to sign up, tell your friends. It's totally free. And then if you are having any other questions, just reach out to me. You can email me at kitty@kittybucholtz.com. And there, I'm almost positive I have a contact page on that rightnowworkshop.com. So you can also use that. Okay. Also, if you're more interested in private coaching, there is a half an hour every other week of a private coaching call in the Finish Your Book intensive coaching program. So every other week, 30 minutes, just you and me working out solutions to your problems and challenges. But if you would rather have just 100% one-on-one coaching, then I also do that. And that would be completely you and me. And there's packages depending on how much time that you would like to put into it, or if you have a certain deadline, a goal that you're trying to reach, that sort of thing. And you can get more information and reach out to me also at rightnowworkshop.com/writing coach. So because this is very individual, and I want to make sure that everybody gets what they need to finish their projects. That is my goal for you, to finish your book and get it out, whether it's independently published or get it out to traditional agents and editors. I want to make sure that you're getting all the time and attention that you need to do those things. So there is a limit to how many people are going to be in the class. Like the class will be no more than 10 people, possibly smaller. And then the one-on-one coaching, individual private coaching, there's going to be a limit to how many coaching clients I'll have, because I want to make sure that I have plenty of time to give to everybody. So if you're interested, you know how to reach me. In the meantime, you are going to learn so much today from Rocki. She is fabulous. I don't think that I have had anybody on the show who isn't fabulous. And she has so much information in her head. She and I could have talked for hours, and I know that I'm going to have her on the show again because there's just so much more that she could teach you and help you with. But today, she's going to give you her reasoning and her overview of how she moved from completely traditionally published and a very good career. She was very well known, a best-selling author, but decided that there was some really good reasons to move to completely independent publishing, which she does now. She also talks about writing series and things that she learned, both good and bad, about writing her various series. So I'm going to stop talking and let her start talking. You are going to love this interview. I hope you have a great time. Get some writing done this week, and we'll talk to you next week. Today's guest is Roxanne St Claire. Published since 2003, Roxanne is a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of nearly 60 romance and suspense novels. She has written several popular series, including The Dog Father, The Dog Mothers, Barefoot Bay, The Guardian Angelinos, and The Bullet Catchers. Several of her books have been optioned for film, and many have been translated into dozens of languages. In addition to being a 10-time nominee and one-time winner of the prestigious Rita Award for the Best in Romance Writing, Roxanne has won the National Reader's Choice Award 4 times, as well as dozens of other writing and industry awards. A frequent and popular national speaker on the subject of writing and the writer's life, Roxanne is a graduate of UCLA, a mother of 2, and recent empty nester. She lives on the east coast of Florida with her husband and 2 dogs. Welcome, Rocki.
Thank you, Kitty. It's great to be here.
It's fun to have you. I was so excited when Lee was like, Lee Duncan, who was just on the show a couple of weeks ago, was like, oh yeah, look, you should definitely talk to my friend Roxanne St Claire. I'm like, hey, I've met her.
Small writing world,
isn't it?
Lee. I am in Lee's wonderful little group, the Writers Camp. I know she talked to you about it on her podcast. I moved a few years ago, so I don't get to see them quite as frequently as we used to. But times being what they are, they're not meeting anyway. But yes, we are co-writers in that we have written probably 25 books each in the same room without, no crossover in the actual writing, but we do write a lot together. It's a great way to be productive and to lose the loneliness factor of writing. And you can find someone else to write, because it is a really lonely job. Let's be honest. It's you and your imaginary friends.
Which can be fun sometimes.
It's a great fun. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's my, dream career, and I'm thrilled to have it, but it's, it can, at the end of the day, when you've been alone all day, you're, I think, somehow even more exhausted from a day of writing. When you're with friends writing, we found that we were energized at the end of the day, which was a great way.
I have to say, the way that you guys have explained the group, I'm thinking that sounds so cool. And it's like right in the middle between the 2 things that aren't really working for me, which is going to a cafe. It's too loud and it's too much. It's too much stimulation. Or if I turn on Netflix, even if I turn the sound off, like I just find myself still, like I need something, but something quiet. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, friends writing in the same room. How fun.
The clicky clack of keys and everyone writing. And but I have to tell you, and I apologize to anyone who hasn't heard that podcast, because we're talking about it like they know, but it's a group of 3 or 4 people sitting around a dining room table and all of us writing usually with headsets in. It's just the most productivity I've ever experienced in writing, but it is not easy. It's not magic that you can find anywhere. It took these 4 particular personalities. I have tried, and people's schedules are, limit their time, or people think it's okay to talk, which it's not. And you don't want to be rude, but you're like, shut up, I'm writing, I'm in the middle of a scene. People eat loudly. It was really lightning in a bottle, and I'm sorry that I had to move away and break the group, but it was a wonderful 10-year run.
Wow. But before we started, you said that you're actually going to be able to see at least Lee. I don't know, some of the others next week.
This week is Nick. We're here while this is airing.
That's right. This week.
The moment this airs, we are at a very small Novelist Inc. conference on the beach. Which has always for me been a combination of a writing retreat and a learning experience and a networking experience. So I get that the networking is going to be down this year due to COVID, but it's still the best writers organization I've ever been associated with. Wow. The location of the conference is beachfront. Literally, you walk out of and we get a little suite, the group of us together, and it's waterfront. You step outside on the balcony, you're looking at the waves, and it's very, very inspiring to do a lot of writing. And we often brainstorm deep into the night, and it's a great week. And I couldn't resist it because I live in Florida, so I have the ability to drive there without flying. And I think I might have not been as anxious to go to the NINC conference if I had to get on a plane. So we really understand the low numbers, but still a great conference.
Oh, that sounds so nice. Now you're making me miss. There was a moment, like you said, one of those lightning in a bottle moments in time when my friend Lorraine Snelling lived here. I lived here. Our friend Kathleen Damp-Wright lived here, and all three of us could drive to Las Vegas, share a suite, and we just did that. Yeah, put on the earphones. Everybody writes. Can't talk until
There's,
lunch.
yeah, that's it.
Oh,
Can't talk till lunch. Thousand. If you didn't write 1,000 words, you don't get to eat.
so great. I think I'm going to like set up some stuffed animals or something and like see if I can find my Alpha Smart or my old laptop and see if I can make a pretend version of it.
Yes, there you go. Your stuffed animals. You need dogs. They help.
Oh, I totally want that. Okay, speaking of dogs, let's
Yes.
segue more into writing. All right,
Yes.
so you have, first of all, a very cute little dog at your feet and a lot of dogs in books. Tell us the short version. We're going to talk about transitioning from traditional publishing to self-publishing. Rocki has got some great experience with this, and I'm super excited to have people hear kind of the whole journey, but we're going to have to do it in kind of nutshells. So give
Sure.
us the nutshell of how you got started and got to, I sold my first book to a traditional publisher.
I did. I sold my first book. I started I think I wrote my first manuscript in 1999, got an agent in 2000, 2001. So we're back there. My very first manuscript didn't sell. My second one did, to Simon and Schuster. And I remember that when the phone call came in, I had a very little boy who is now an attorney, 27 years old. He was
Wow.
very little at the time. I remember after I got off the phone, I walked into, he was playing video games. I walked in and I said, no, you're not going to bark. I said, I said, you're not going to believe what just happened to me. And he said, you got drafted by the Yankees. And I said, yes, I actually did. Because I sold to Simon and Schuster. Yeah. And that was starting off at, a pinnacle. This was a dream. And I was very, very excited. It was their pocketbooks imprint. And they bought my first book for, and then second, third, fourth. And I sort of rolled over and started writing for Harlequin because Simon and Schuster would only publish one book a year. And obviously I could write more than one book a year. Yeah. And thus began 30 some books sold to Pocket. I was with them for quite a long time. Harlequin. I did a few young adults for Random House. Then I moved from Simon and Schuster to Grand Central, which is an imprint of Hachette. I was immersed in traditional publishing. Yeah. And it was, and I never lost that feeling of I'm playing for the Yankees. And, it was a thrill, and it was a challenge, and it was, there were many, many, many upsides that came with the cachet of writing for a traditional publisher in New York. Yeah. And I get that people want to do that. And I get that even today, although I do believe the stigma has disappeared. There's a, that means I made it. I got through that gatekeeper, and they love my work, and they see, 100,000 manuscripts a year, and they picked mine. And I can walk into a bookstore and there's my book on the shelf, and I can look at it, and I'm sitting right there, just past Nora Roberts, and, before, I get that. But with all that came tremendous challenges. And for me, they were challenges that, I don't want to diss traditional publishing.
Thanks for that.
I get that people really want it, and it has a lot to offer. It taught me how to write a book, not only how to write a book, much of that is organic. And I had some really good editors along the way, and I give them all the credit in the world. But what I learned in traditional publishing is the process from the moment you have an idea to the day the book is on the shelf. Yeah. And that is not an easy process. There are so many points along the spectrum of writing a first draft and a content or development edit, and then a revision, and what's involved in a revision, and then what's involved in a copy edit, and then what's involved in the proofing, and after the proofing, when the cover gets designed, and at what point does what about the cover? How does that cover sell books? From, you know, and then how does it how do you market it, and how do you package it, and how do you brand it, and how do you produce it, and how do you get it out the door? Having done that 30 times is a huge advantage. And many people, when you go from traditional to indie, and many people, when I went indie in, I think my first indie book came out the last month of 2013, but I technically went indie in 2014. I think the dates blur, because I have since written more books indie since 2014 than I wrote from 2003 to then. I have written over 30 indie because I can put out 3 or 4 a year. I am no limitation on my time except my limitation. So when I lost my train of thought there. When I made the transition to indie, lots of people said, "Oh, of course you were successful. You had hit the New York Times. You were already a well-known author." That is not true. That is just not true, because when I got successful with indie, I reached an entirely new audience, and I continued to reach an entirely new audience. A book didn't die 4 weeks after it was on the shelf. So what the advantage I had was understanding the publication process, because I then could replicate it for myself. And I think the hardest thing today for people who don't have the traditional background is they don't really know how to replicate that. They don't really understand that there is a process. You might be able to squeeze it down into weeks or months. It doesn't necessarily have to take 18 months like it does in New York, but you need to understand what that process is. And that is the distinct advantage I had from going from a multi-publisher background to an indie career.
Wow. Yeah. And it's not something that, if somebody is doing it, I'm just not aware of them. I haven't seen somebody who had the kind of career that you had traditionally create like a course or a book that was step 1, 2, 3, 4, partially because it's not quite as easy as step 1, 2, 3, 4, but
yeah, they're out there. I don't know if there's a book. There are books out there. Let's Get Digital was sort of the first one that came out, and I'm trying to think there are I think some out there, but there's a wealth of information on how to do it. But in an organized fashion, I probably could write a book, but I'd rather write my book, but I probably could write a book about it. I do give a workshop on it, and I've given the workshop with Kristen Painter, who is incredibly successful indie author, who also came like me right around the same time. She's about a year behind me. Just has killed it in indie. And the two of us do a workshop. We've presented it frequently. We call it from midlist to mad money. And it's basically a 1-year plan for how you can go from 0 to wherever you want to go in 1 year. And I replicated that plan with my daughter, Breezy Bennett, who just launched last year. She's just coming up. Her 6th book just came out.
Wow.
And she came out of the gate at ground zero, didn't ever consider, she graduated from college and said, I want to write like you do. And I'm like, okay. And she did, and she's done very well, and she's starting her 2nd series. And obviously she had a great advantage with having me mentor her and help her. She never for 1 second considered an agent or New York.
Yeah.
It wasn't. And let me tell you, she's supporting herself easily on what she's made in her 1st year, because she followed my plan. I said, this is what you do. So I probably should put that in a book, but it's, and I'm happy to kind of nutshell that out today for your listeners and viewers, but it's, it does help to understand the process of what it takes to publish a book, because it isn't just write it, knock it out, put it up on Amazon and start cashing checks. It is not That's not how it works.
Yeah, yeah. I've started coaching writers in the last couple of years, and it's tricky. You don't want to discourage anyone, and you don't want to sound like you're disrespecting their work. But there's usually everyone that I work with, there's a lot more that needs to be done than they realize that needs to be done in order to make it, the best possible product.
Kitty, that is step one. That, when you start writing for New York, the first thing you learn is they're going to make you redo everything, and they're going to make you revise, and they're going to make you change everything down to the character's name. And I feel one of my great reasons I've been successful in indie is I would far rather revise than write. I love to revise. I will not put out a book that isn't the best possible book it can be, and I go through multiple rounds of edits. I have a content and development editor. I have pretty critical beta readers. I have a killer copy editor, and probably will go through beta one more time and then 3 times through proofing. That's just from manuscript to getting it ready to be put into a format.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to skip that step, and maybe you can, and maybe you can write a book with 1 draft, but not very many people can, and those books will ultimately die off because readers can sense that there isn't quality there. So the most important step 1 is write a really good book, and that's so much easier said than done. And write a really good book that appeals to a specific market. Understand your market, understand who the readers are, understand what is a romance, what is a romantic suspense, what is sci-fi, whatever it is, whatever genre you're writing in, know it, read it, absorb it, and understand what the expectations of the genre are. If you're not doing literary fiction.
Right.
Then you can get into all the, how do I get up on Amazon, and how do I start making money, and how do I brand myself, and how do I do covers? It's a big, big job.
Yeah.
And a lot of people I just want to write books. I don't want to do any of the other stuff. That indie stuff is not for me. And I get that. But I personally want to make money. So I want to do it right. So I did not enter indie publishing for the joy of writing. I love my job. I love writing, but we'll back up a little bit. And this is kind of what happened to me in the transition period.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So your readers can understand. I was definitely enjoying a successful career, in as much as I don't know how you want to define that. Everyone's definition of success is different. I certainly had some name recognition. I was about to sign a 3-book contract. That was the biggest 3-book contract I'd ever done. I was fairly pleased with the numbers, and I had launched I had switched genres from romantic suspense to contemporary romance because it was getting hot, and that's what they wanted. They were kind of like, well, romantic suspense is dying, so you have to do what the publishers tell you they know is hot and what's going on.
Yeah.
What I have since learned is and I knew it then, there's a very big disconnect between the offices in New York and the person reading in, Indiana.
Yeah.
There's a big disconnect there. They don't really, they are going, the New York publishers are making their decisions based on what distributors and booksellers are telling them. In indie now, I make my decisions, many of them, based on what my 3,000 readers that are hardcore fans in my reader group are telling me. And I believe that's a big difference.
Yeah.
But I had switched genres at their request, and I had done very well with my first Barefoot Bay 4 books, and they wanted to continue them, and they made a great offer. And there was an aspect of the contract that I was really uncomfortable with. It was very, very negative for an author. I can go, if you want me to go into the detail of what it is, people can watch for it in their contracts.
If it's not something you're uncomfortable sharing.
Oh no, I've been very public with it. It's what they called joint accounting or basket accounting. And basically what they're saying is, we're going to give you these 3 books, the advances on each of these 3 books, book 1, book 2, book 3. And when book one earns out, you start earning royalties on that book. So whatever you make when you reach let's use an arbitrary number. Let's say it's $25,000 for each book. And when that book earns $25,000, you start getting royalties. But with their basket and joint accounting, you can't have those royalties until all 3 books in the contract earn out. So I'm accruing royalties on book 1. Book 3 isn't coming out for another 6 months. Isn't coming out. So it might be another 18 months till that earns out. That's 3 years they're sitting on my money.
Yeah.
So that I really had an issue with that. I had a very high-powered New York agent, and I started talking to people at RWA, and they said, oh, I got that taken out. So I went back from an RWA conference, and I said to my agent, get that out before I sign it. And I had given a verbal on this. I said yes, but they sat too long on the contract because they take some 6 months to do everything.
Yeah.
But I had never put ink on the page. And they refused to take it out because they said at a certain level, at a certain amount of money, which was high, much like I said, this was the biggest contract I'd ever had. They will not take out basket accounting. And we went back and forth and back and forth. In the meantime, Bella Andre, Barbara Freethy, Marie Force, these women were people I knew well, especially Bella and Barbara were dear friends of mine. We were at Pocket at the same time at Simon & Schuster. We knew each other well as up and coming writers. They were pouring the indie Kool-Aid down my throat. And they were saying, you don't have to do this because look how much money you could make. And I said, well, how much money could I make? And they're like, well, look at your digital sales. And I looked at my digital sales and figure out if you were getting 70% of that money instead of 20 or 25 or 21 or whatever ridiculous thing it was. And I could just, even that math I could do. I mean, I'm not much of math, but my husband and I sat down and we ran the numbers, and they kept saying, nope. And I just said, you know what? I'm gonna say no to this contract. And Kitty, I thought I would throw up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
That night I said no because I had 2 kids, one in college, one going into college.
Oh gosh.
Major breadwinner. What am I doing? What am I doing?
Yeah.
So I said no to the contract, and I woke up the next day and I sat down and I made myself a production schedule. And I figured out what every single step I had to do. I couldn't write a full-length novel until my last book had been out for 6 months contractually. So I wrote 3 novellas. I continued the series I was writing. I wrote them technically 40,000 words as a novella, and they were 39,999. I got them out. By the time the 3rd one came out, I had a plan for the 3 books that I was going to write for them. And all I can say is I've never looked back. I have probably 35 books published indie since that day. I'm on my 3rd very successful series. I have a team of editors and proofreaders and an assistant and a publicist and everything I need. They all work for me. I call all the shots. When I decided I wanted to write older characters, silver foxes, no one else was doing it. And I knew from my readers that they loved when I did Silver Fox Friday. So I launched the Timeless series with older heroes. I put a silver-haired man on the cover, which I know New York would never have let me done. They would have been like, well, he can be 42 and you can mention that in the back cover copy, but no, we can't. It won't sell if you put a silver. That is my #1 selling book, that series. When I have a book of, what do they call them? A collection of all 3 Silver Fox titles in one, and it is boom, #1 every month. That is a popular book. I just had a sense because I know they would never have let me do that. And then I decided to launch a whole series and put dogs on the cover of every book and make dogs central to the story. And now I can't go on Amazon and I don't see every other romance has a dog. And I'm like, imagine that.
Interesting.
And I knew when to end that series. I know they would have either ended it too soon or ended it too late. I knew when to do a spin-off series. It's going great guns. And I learned a lot from my experience with New York, but I have the most tremendous amount of creative freedom that I've ever had. And I will be honest with you, the joy was going out of my writing when I wrote for New York. They were dragging out, they were just taking it out of me on every level, creatively, professionally, marketing wise. It was like running into a brick wall, and I almost quit. And I'm so glad I didn't, because the indie career has been life-changing. And forget, I mean, my first year I made 3 times as much as I made my biggest year of writing for New York. And I have never looked back, and I have never missed walking into a store and not seeing my book on the shelf, because most of the time I would walk in and it wasn't there because the person at Barnes and Noble hadn't stocked it yet. Right. And I just, I have a book coming out tomorrow. I'm so excited about it. It was a very, very challenging story, but I have such a great editorial team and readers, and I'm very, very happy. So for me, and I know for many other writers, moving out of New York and into my own little publishing company was the best thing, the best risk I've ever taken. So I am an evangelist about indie publishing. People come to me and they say, well, I just want I want the validation. And I'm like, okay, well, I want the money. So and I mean, I say that with obviously I want to write beautiful, amazing books. And I don't think you can maintain a career in indie or with New York if you don't write great books. They will eventually lose the readers. But it just was a fantastic move for me, and I love to encourage other writers to consider it. I know many do, but I still think there are quite a few people who are of that mindset that if you didn't sell to New York, you're not really an author.
Right.
Well, that's not true. I'm here to say that's not true.
Yeah. And I think that those are some important things to keep in mind, that it's not just our industry. I'm sure that there are a ton of AAA baseball players who are so mad that people don't think they're a real professional baseball player just because they're not in a major league team.
Yeah, good analogy. Exactly.
And of course, it is different because in this case, we're talking about people who might be called AAA, but are making a lot more money than some of the major league people. But anyway, aside from the money, like just looking at it as it's not just us. But I think it's important for everybody to, like you said, think about it. Like take enough time to think about all the pros and cons. If what you really want more than anything in the world is the validation, then pursue it. But at some point, just keep in mind that you may be like, okay, that was great, but it turns out that I'm not getting this or that, either the creativity or as many books as I can write or the money, and therefore I want to do something else. And it could be hybrid. They want to continue to do both, or moving all the way over to indie like you did. So I think that it's great to encourage everyone to think about all of the options so that they're aware. And I have a couple of friends who they're traditional only. And one of my friends, she's kind of closer to retirement age, and she's very happy to write 1 book a year, maybe 2. She does worry about whether or not she's not going to get another contract, but she doesn't want the pressure of having to do all the work herself. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between, it's a lot of work to be a traditional published author, but an entirely different amount of kind of work.
It's actually surprising how similar it was. New York, I mean, I guess unless you're a #1 New York Times bestselling author, and I actually have one of my closest friends in the world is a #1 New York Times bestselling author, and she still has to do a lot of, you do your own marketing. You do your own marketing. What you don't do is make decisions on the brand, on the covers, on the production schedule, on the release dates, and on, all of that is in the hands of New York, and I do make those decisions. I guess everything is relative. What is a lot of work? I work full time. I work every day, and usually one day on the weekends. I work more now that my kids have moved out and I have an empty nest than I did when they were younger. I write about 4 to 5 hours a day. That is nothing but writing. I try to do 2,500 words, 2,000, 3,000 somewhere. If I'm at the end of the book, it might be 5 every day. And the rest of the time, I am managing the business, whether it's, getting books, working with my formatter, or working with my assistant to do marketing, or getting on Facebook with my reader group, which I do constantly because I'm in constant contact with those people. They're amazing, amazing women. Working with my cover artist, designing a cover. And there is a lot of work. And I really, really, it's so blended into my everyday. I don't think about it. I don't wake up and, and think, oh, I have to do 4 hours of marketing and 2 hours of editing and 3. No, it's just all one big day. But I did see it firsthand. When the Breezy Bennett brand launched, my daughter decided to start writing. I have taught her the process of, and I can see, and she was making lists. She's like, okay, so now I have to upload it. And then we have to make sure that the cover is in, and we have to contact Amazon. We have to do, and she went all Kindle Unlimited straight out of the gate because she's a millennial and they all believe in subscription programs for all entertainment.
Yeah.
So I got to see just how much work it is, but and I obviously helped her, and I obviously gave her access to my people who already knew the job. So I did make the learning curve for her was lower than it would be for someone else right out of the gate. Right. But she's on her own 100%. She does it all now. I mean, she might say, I have a question on something that has to be done, but she is doing, has her own website designer, has works with the cover artist, works with the formatter, works with the, all of the copy editor, all of the people along the way. So I know that in a year it can be done. Yeah. And she has worked full time. A lot of people have to have a day job, which makes it a little bit more frustrating. But she saved up her money and she lived at home for a year, lived here with us, and was able to launch this career in a year. So that I know, as my little guinea pig, I know it can work. She's right. A phenomenal writer, I must say so myself. And
nice.
That helped from right out of the gate. She had a really, really strong voice that went straight to her sort of romantic comedy young market. So I know that it can be done. Is it a lot of work? Well, if it's a full-time job, it's work. Right. It's not a hobby. It's probably not easy to do as a hobby. And people who say, I only want to write, I don't want to do anything else, it might not be for them, because there are a lot of other aspects to the job of being an indie publisher that are not just writing. But I have a marketing background. Before I was an author, I was 15 years in public relations, and I was with the largest public relations firm in the world as a senior vice president. So I do understand writing copy, and I do understand branding. I don't like it. I don't enjoy creating ads on Facebook, but I do it. I don't give that over to anyone else because I know my voice. I know what I want a reader to see and hear when they read an ad that I've written, a copy of an ad. But it's a great job. I mean, if you want to work, I mean, if you're willing to put in the work, it's very lucrative, and it's very it's fun. And work from home and you write your books. And if you want to be a writer, it's just a tremendous way to succeed. Yeah.
And I think that like you were saying, one of the things that Breezy is the first name.
Breezy Bennett. It's her pen name.
I thought maybe I have to go look it up because I'm totally into romantic comedy. It's my
you'll love her book. She has sports romance. There's sports romantic comedy, all football team, and there's a 6-book series. It's in KU. Go get it. First book is Wild Ride.
Okay, Wild Ride, everybody.
Yeah, it's the South Florida Riders. Nice. And it was so much fun to just hold your thought for 1 second. It was so much fun to go from conception to book 6. I mean, we literally sat spring break of her senior year. We brainstormed, we sat down together, and she goes, well, I love sports. She loves sports. I love football. And we came up with a name together, and she broke down the storylines and planned out the whole series and started writing it. And that was the scariest part of all, because I thought, I've read her writing. she was, 4. So now she's a young adult and a young woman. And what if I hate it?
Right.
So I said, she came down one morning and she said, well, I thought the best way to start is to start. So she hands me her laptop. She goes, I wrote a chapter. I'm like, oh, okay. So I sat down and I was at the bottom of page 2. And I said, you got it. You got it. You have a voice. I've laughed 3 times out loud. You have personality in your voice, and you have humor, and you have heart. And she has just done a phenomenal job. So that's where you have to start.
Yeah.
Authors, you have to start with a voice. And I don't think you can teach that. I really don't. I don't think you can learn it. You have a writing voice that is going to appeal to people, or you can hone the one you have. But I don't think you can come up with a new voice. You kind of speak and write who you are.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely something that the more you write, the more you're going to find that it just gets better. And I think that you can go from somebody saying that you don't have a voice to somebody saying, oh, I think now you have a voice, but all you've been doing is just making what is inside of you better and making it work on the page in a way that maybe it didn't earlier.
Absolutely. And I always tell people to read a lot, because reading other authors will help you hone your voice, because you're going to see what appeals to you. And what appeals to you is where that's sort of the sweet spot for how you probably are going to write.
Yeah. Okay. So we need to actually spend time writing, make sure that we are understanding of how stories are made, how the genre expectations are and the genre that we want, spend enough time actually writing that we can create a really good book. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. What's your question?
And so some people might be thinking, okay, great, I can do that, or I am doing it. But now that I'm thinking about going this indie path, I don't know anybody. I wouldn't know who to hire. I don't know all the steps. And I always encourage people to just reach out. And I know it's hard because a lot of people in this business tend towards the more introverted, thank you, side of the personality.
Sure.
But the nice thing is that because a lot of us can't really go anywhere or do anything, you can just reach out on social media and Zoom and not be expected really to show up and try to be interesting in front of strangers.
There is no shortage of information and education if you want to start as an indie writer. There are multiple Facebook groups that are for new writers. There are many that are for more experienced writers. There are blog posts and websites and places you have to dig. I don't even know where I would necessarily where I would send someone, but if you're writing romance, you can get connected with RWA, the Romance Writers of America, NINC, the Novelist Inc. You already have to have multiple books published before you can join. But there is a wealth of information on how to do this. There are books. David Gochran, Let's Get Digital. If you want to come out of the gate and know how to write indie, there is another one too, written by 4 or 5 authors together. It's just not. I think Liliana Hart is one of them.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it's on my bookshelf behind me. I just can't.
Yes, it does spell out step by step. I mean, just get on Amazon and Google, indie. You can find it. If you spend, pour a glass of wine, sit down on your computer, you can find this information. It's there.
Right.
So. And you can learn the process. Do you hold back, write 3 books and then release them all one right after the other in a month? I strongly recommend people do that. Writing a series, but the whole process of indie publishing, it doesn't have to be daunting. There are just so many resources online and in person, and it doesn't. If you if you love an indie author and you've read his or her work, write to them. I mean, I must field questions like that multiple times a week, and I just say, here's what I would recommend you do. I happen to be the kind of person that will write back to, not all authors will do that, but I will. There's just so much. So if you're hitting a brick wall with New York, and it seems like a mountain that you'll never climb, and you want the world to get you believe you have books that could appeal to a lot of readers, don't let them be the gatekeeper. The reader is the gatekeeper.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I was just thinking, a lot of writers, traditionally published and indie published and hybrid, will have sections on their website that is a tab that says for writers or something like that. And a lot of times you can find a ton of free and very helpful information.
Oh yeah, it's definitely
those.
out there. Absolutely. And you need to go look for it. But I think it's just such a viable and respected option. There is no more stigma of self-publishing. I don't, I mean, if someone says to me, "Oh, well, she mustn't be a very good writer because she's self-published," I'll just say, read a book, see my 10 Rita nominations. I would hold my book up quality-wise to anything out of New York. And I would also say that probably 80% of my readers have no idea I'm independently published.
Right.
They have no clue. I get email all the time says, "Tell your publisher," or "I'm so glad you're a publisher." And they just don't understand the nuances of the industry, and who would expect them to.
Right.
If the book has a quality feel to it, if the cover is professional. I mean, yes, you can go on Amazon and see some cringe-worthy covers. Don't do that. Do beautiful covers. I shoot my own covers. I take a photographer, but that's because I use rescue dogs on my covers, and then I donate a portion of proceeds to the place where I shoot the covers. But that's just kind of my thing. I just love dogs. But do be smart and read and look at what's happening in the industry, but don't feel like there's a stigma attached to self-publishing, because there is no stigma attached to self-publishing.
And the people who do say something, and I've had some people say something to me as early as just a couple of months ago, and I just smile, and I'm just like, you have no idea what is going on in another part of, the universe over here.
Like, what do you mean? Like, what
yeah, somebody's saying something, well, you're never going to make a living writing, so, and then finish the sentence, and I'm just like,
yeah.
Okay, this isn't the time and place for me to have a learning discussion with you where I teach you about what's going on. But I just kind of go, okay, well, there is, but that's not what we're talking about right now. And
it's a private thing. I don't care what people think about, income. And as I said, everyone measures success differently. For some people, success is a 6-figure income. For some people, success is a book in your hand. For some people, success is a 40-book series. It's everyone is different. And there are lots of roads to success. And I just really, making the choice to go indie was, for me, the best thing I ever did as a writer. It is, people, like I said, people say, well, you were already well known. It was so easy for you. And I just have to tell them that if you went on to my reader site and talked to those 3,000 people, maybe 600 of them came with me from traditional publishing. The rest are all new readers that I have gathered over the years.
Right. And for me, success is having a book that nobody can tell the difference between.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But I was just reading a book by somebody, and I can't think of who it was. Somebody well-known enough. Anyway, and they were saying, I know that, my covers could be better and this could be better. They were writing nonfiction and self-publishing. And they're like, but the thing is, I'm selling a lot of books and I make more than enough money to live on. And so I'm okay with the level of, in my mind, I was thinking, you're okay with a lower level of professionalism, but I saw his point. He wanted to worry about how much money he was making, and I want everything to be like perfectly beautiful and make money.
That
So you just have to find your own.
I'm in the perfectly beautiful and make money school of thought. Yeah, I will go back 20 times on a cover. I will, it has to be professional. It has to be good. But some people don't have an eye for it.
Yeah.
And they, that's when you do need to bring in others and bring in help. And there are good editors, really good editors that you can hire, and it doesn't have to cost a fortune. Do not put a book out that hasn't been professionally copy edited. That is where I probably spend more money on editing by far than covers. And I have good covers. And I do hire a photographer, and I hire models, and I bring the dogs in. We travel to the dog refuge, and my covers I love my covers, but I do not scrimp on editing. So I think it's very, very important that people, you do want to save your money to go. You don't want, this is not free. You don't walk out the door and put a book up on Amazon and start making money, and it's never been edited and it doesn't have a professional cover. People do it. I probably couldn't think of anyone who's succeeded wildly doing that, but it is, and I'm not saying pay for book doctors. I'm not saying pay to get ripped off. You got to do your homework and get good editors that you trust. They're hard, really, really good editors can be hard to find. I know my editor hasn't taken a new client in 2 years.
Yeah.
And when I started with her, I was her second client. And now she has some big, big authors who put out 3 books a year, and that's it. She's got enough work on the table.
Right.
But I think it's a really viable option to publishing for someone who's very, very serious about a career. Yeah. I think if you want to write your grandfather's, life history and put it up for the family to read, that is one form of self-publishing, and that's not what I'm talking about. Right. I'm talking about readers who pick up a book of mine and have absolutely no idea it didn't come out of New York publishing.
Yeah. Speaking of picking up a book of yours,
please do.
I had been trying so hard to finish the book before today. I'm 62% of the way there, and can I tell you where I'm at without giving it away?
You're reading the book that comes out tomorrow.
Yes.
Man's Best Friend. Yeah.
Man's Best Friend. So why don't you tell us what's the storyline? Where does it fit? It's part of a series. It was actually an offshoot of another series. Why don't you start up there?
I started with a series called The Dog Father. It's about a big family that runs a canine rescue and training center in North Carolina, and the widowed father is determined to have all 6 of his kids get married. So he does some pulling of the strings like the Godfather did. And of course there's a dog at the center of every story, and every story is kind of a match that was made by him. The 9th book in that series was Old Dog, New Tricks. I actually have his book right here. It's a great example of that silver fox I was telling you about. Right. Yeah, see, I shot that right at Alico Animal Refuge, and he was a local school teacher, a principal at the school, and the dog is one of their rescues. Aww. So I love that. It's dear to me. So he's the 9th book in that series, and it was so popular. My all 6 kids and a couple novellas, and his story is done. So I spun off his mother, who's a very popular little Irish old lady, and another Greek grandmother who comes into the story through marriage. And they became the dog mothers with their little dachshunds, and they, between them, have 6 grandchildren. So every book is a romance. It's a very emotional, family-oriented stories. There's a dog in every story, deeply embedded in every story, not just, one of the characters has a dog. And the stories are very, they're romances, but they're family. They're a lot about the family. So the Dog Mothers is spun off now. This is book 6. I guarantee you that every book stands alone. I'm sure you have noticed if you didn't read the first 9 and you didn't read the first 5, and you're not lost.
Right. No, in fact, when you held up that cover and said that about book 9 there, what's that one
Daniel.
Called? Old Dog, New Tricks. I was like, is that Uncle Daniel?
Yes, that's Uncle Daniel.
Yeah.
And Rusty.
Yes. And Rusty.
Yes. And this is Hush Puppy. That's part of the Dog Mother series. This is the book before the one you're reading. This is John Santorini.
And the twin.
Yes, see, now you are reading it. And if you go way back, these are some of the earlier books. This is Bad to the Bone. This is a really popular cover. This is
Nice.
Molly's story, Molly Kilcannon.
Oh,
So you're getting to know her. You're actually, her little baby is in the book you're
yeah.
reading.
Yeah.
Um, some books are really easy and fun, and that's rare. I call those a gimme. This was a gimme. Hush Puppy, I wrote in the height of the pandemic. Waking up in the middle of the night, worried about my family, worried about my husband, worried about myself and the world, and what's going to happen. And I escaped into my studio and I wrote the lightest, brightest, kind of happiest book I have ever written. And I feel like it was really a COVID escape, and readers noticed it. They're like, this book was so much fun. And then after that, it was easy. It poured out of me, that book. Then I started Man's Best Friend, which has a very sort of heavy backstory of, tragedy that kind of kicks off the whole book. And it wasn't easy. And it wasn't, I mean, it's fun. It's a fun story. There's definitely humor in it, a lot of family stuff, but it was a heavier subject matter. And it was a very hard book to write. And I cried a lot. And I wrote 100 pages. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought, I had this big fight with my gut instinct. It said, "You're writing the wrong book." And maybe that's years of knowing what's going to work on the page. But when my gut tells me I'm writing the wrong book, and I went back and I literally tore it down to page 1 and started over again. And, people think you don't have to do that if you're self-publishing. You can do whatever you want. No, I knew I was writing the wrong book. And then I started writing the book that you're reading now. And it's still a challenge. It was a creative challenge, an emotional challenge. I cried a lot writing the book, but I'm really proud of the finished product, which is the story of a man who, suffered a tremendous loss and comes back and connects with his childhood best friend and finds love again. And that's always what my stories are about, sort of healing and redemption and hope and family and the power of a big family behind you. And that's comes out tomorrow, and I'm very excited about it.
Yay. And congratulations.
The early reviews are very good. Yes, thank you. I'm super excited. Man's Best Friend. I highly recommend it.
Yes, so do I.
Oh, thank you.
Now, while we're on this, I also wanted to just ask you, because this is a topic that I think a lot of people, you hear writers saying, if only I had thought about that on book 1. And other people are like, I totally figured it all out, 2 years ago on book 1. This is a pretty ginormous family. So tell us, what were your thoughts? I mean, you already had experience. You weren't a first-time author. You probably knew you were going to write a series, but
I'm not. This is not my strong suit. I suffer I suffer with my series because I don't plot. I don't know what all the books are going to be. I had some rough ideas. I try not to write myself into a corner. I hate when I have to go back and say, oh, did I really say that town was 2 hours away 5 books ago? I just want them to drive over there in 5 minutes right now, and I can't. I'm doing that right now.
Yeah.
I try to seed the characters in each book as appropriate. It is such a huge family. I don't put every single character in every single book. That personally drives me crazy as a reader. I only use a character who's important to that story. You're reading Man's Best Friend. Molly has a pretty high role in that because I knew the heroine had known Molly in another life. The book before, it's a completely different relationship with his cousins. I try to keep it reasonable for a new reader. I want you as a new reader to come in and not get lost. I try to seed the characters so that the series interest is maintained, but I don't paint myself into a corner. And it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Because you can say one thing that you have to live with. I said a few things about Declan and Evie because they had a long history, and I had to work my story around those existing moments, like when he saw her in the past.
Okay.
Go ahead. You have a question?
No, so so in the previous books, of course, he's one of the brothers. He would have been mentioned at least on
Oh, he's
as
been
an
in
aside.
yes. Oh, a
Okay.
lot of the books. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
so all the things that you had been saying about him, now you had to make sure that you didn't get any of it wrong, and you had to stay
Right.
within what you.
It had to stay within his character and within, and that was a big challenge for me in this book. And the next one is next up is the Christmas. I always do a Christmas novella, and they always have ridiculously cute titles. We've had Bark, the Herald Angels Sing, and we've had Santa Claus is Coming to Town. We've had Dachshund Through the Snow, and now I'm writing Felice Naughty Dog.
Oh, that's awesome.
I wish I had a cover for you. It's so cute. And I always do like 150-page Christmas novella that features the family or the grandmothers. And it's really a gift to my readers, because those are kind of helpful to know the series, but it's really a gift to them, to thank them for buying these books, book after book after book, and that now it's become a thing. It's like, what's the Christmas novella going to be? So it's been fun. So it's just and I'm learning. I'm still learning about the craft. I'm still learning about writing and series, like you say. I swear every time I start a series, I'm going to know every character, and for me, a good deal of the magic happens at the keyboard. Yeah. I know what has to happen. I do not know how it's going to happen. And I will literally write in my outline, chaos ensues. I don't know what the chaos is going to be until I get there and I start writing it. And I think that has maintained a lot of the fun in the process. Yes, there's marketing, and yes, there's publishing work, but it's still fun to take people from thin air and give them emotions and a life and a happy ending. That's still what I love to do.
Totally. I totally get that. I'm trying not to have these long discussions with you that I'm like, okay, the reader or listeners probably don't care as much about all the things that I'm about ready to say. No. If only we had a longer coffee.
Exactly.
But okay, so trying to direct my thoughts. So did you, at the beginning of Dog Father, decide how many kids that there would be, and then how many potential books that you could make?
I did. I did not expect it to be as popular. I thought I was very, very quite pleasantly surprised by how popular the series got. So I had planned a 6-book series. I had 6 kids. I thought that would be a nice, good place. So I'm basically on book 15 now or something. And then almost immediately, people started asking for Daniel's story, almost immediately.
Wow.
Which really surprised me. But then I shouldn't have surprised me, because I know they love the Silver Fox. They're asking for Grandma Finney's story. Okay, she's 87. So,
yeah.
So almost immediately, I knew that I would have at least 7, because Daniel would have to have a book. And then I came up with the idea for Daniel's book, which was like, well, of course, he marries someone who has a big family, and then I can have more kids, because I got to figure out ways to spread the family out here, because people want more. So the first series ended up being 9, which was the 7 stories and 2 Christmas novellas. And then we brought the 2 dog mothers together, and I wasn't sure how that was going to go. It's one of those things where, perfect example in indie publishing, I could take the risk. I didn't have to have a room full of people in New York decide that my numbers merited a spin-off series, because that's their decision, and it's based on what booksellers are buying. I just knew that my readers did not want this series to end. Yeah. And I knew Grandma Finney is a super popular character. And then I had mentioned on the page, she had never planned to have this person as a character. The Greek ex-mother-in-law of the woman Daniel ended up marrying, and her big Greek family. And then I thought, I could bring Yaya in, and just the 5 things I've said about her on the page are so different from Grandma Finney. I have these 2 old ladies. One's Greek and rough around the edges and sharp-tongued, and one is the sweetest little Irish lady you ever want to meet, who will, embroider you a pillow. And they end up being best friends and matchmakers. And that series, The Dog Mothers, has just, people like, I must get an email a day. Please tell me this book series isn't going to end. I'm like, well, we're going to run out of we're going to run out of grandchildren.
Yeah.
But I have an idea. I have an idea.
Nice.
I'm going to run it until I'm going to run its course. And also as a writer, when I hit the series number that I have planned for The Dog Mothers will bring me to a total of 21 dog books. Do I want to write more after that? I don't know. I have to please myself too.
Right.
There are limitations in a series that you have to live, expectations and limitations like there are in a genre, there are in a series. I can't all of a sudden do a big, dark romantic suspense. That's not what readers expect from these books.
Yeah.
I can't leave out the matchmaking element. I can't leave out the dog. And as a writer who's written 60 books, I like to try other things. I love chick lit. I love women's fiction. I love mysteries. So, and I can only do probably 3 books in a novella a year. Maybe 4 if I really pushed it, and 1 is shorter because I sometimes do a series with other authors. We do a completely unrelated series of 7 Brides, but I don't have more than that in me to write. I mean, I know there are authors who put out 7, 8, 9, 10 books a year. I'm not one of them. I do too much revision. So I have to know my limitations.
Yeah. Yes. Knowing your limitations and understanding that it's okay to take risks. That's the other thing you had mentioned that I wanted to just kind of bring it back around to listeners' attention one more time. Totally. This is the place to take risks and to understand that some of them will pan out and some of them won't. And that's fine. Then you just do the next thing.
Absolutely. There's no reason, if a series doesn't take off, you just move on to the next. And I made a mistake in the beginning of my career. I was writing this Barefoot Bay series, which is essentially an island setting off the coast of Florida. And I kept doing mini series within the series. So there were 5 romantic suspense series. There were 3 Silver Fox books. There were 3 wedding planners, sort of women's fiction. So there were multiple genres within this one setting, which I thought was just genius. It was fine. Those books still sell really well. They all but basically they're 5 separate series, all set in the same place. So right. Readers, and that by the time I finished that series, I knew that readers did not want me to jump around from subgenre to subgenre within a series. And was it a mistake? I wouldn't say it was a mistake. Those books didn't tank by any means, but I could have done it. I could have been a lot smarter. And so I was a lot smarter in my next series. You don't get that opportunity freedom, when you don't have that freedom when someone else is making the decision as to whether or not to give you another contract. They just say, that didn't work. And they don't care because they've got 60 other authors in their stable. And for me, it's like, well, yeah, but my career. So again, that was just, I learned. And you do make mistakes along the way. There have been covers that I have to go back and say, I can't look at that anymore. But never, I never want to make mistakes in the quality of the writing. That's my line in the sand. I just got to have a great book. I won't put it out until I know it's a great book.
I think that is a line in the sand and a rock to stand on. Like, this is the way that we should finish the interview. Okay. Just make sure you have a quality book that people really want to read.
Yes, regardless of the path you take to publication, the book has to be the best book that you have in you. And that is not the place to cut corners. Definitely get a beta reader, have a critique, hire an editor. Don't trust just yourself on the quality of the book. Obviously listen to your gut instinct, but if the quality is there, your books will sell no matter how they get to the market.
Excellent. I love it. Rocki, you are just so encouraging to people. I'm so glad that you're here.
I really love what I do now. So I love sharing it. Thank you.
Oh,
thank you for having me.
Yay. And I'm going to have Breezy on the show also.
Oh, Breezy. She's a little more introverted than I am. She's one of those people that are like, I don't think I want to do an interview. But I could do it with her. We could do it sometime.
There you go.
Together.
Oh,
she's
you know what?
Carolina now.
I am already thinking I'm already thinking of ideas that we could do for a show for the two of you. So we'll
Okay,
talk.
yes, the mother-daughter, you got it. You
That's
got
right.
it. That's
All right. So
great.
listen, lots of really interesting books and in different subgenres. If you're not a romantic and I love dogs kind of person, like there's a lot of other things, but the book that's coming out of tomorrow is romantic and with dogs. So where can people find you, all of your books?
Well, the best place to go is RoxanneStClaire.com. You know, my website. It's all the book. There's every single book I've ever written is in the backlist, and each series is broken down by series. There are printable lists. So RoxanneStClaire.com. If you are already a reader and want to join my reader group on Facebook, just search Roxanne St Claire Reader Group and come and be a dog mother. Is what we call ourselves. We talk about we talk tales and tales, AIL and ALE. A lot of dogs, a lot of books, and so that's really where I spend most of my time on the internet. I'm not a crazy social media person, but those are really the best places to find me. Come to my website. My books are at all retailers, obviously, and always best to just get on Amazon, type in my name, and you'll see my entire canon of work.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being on the show.
Well, thanks
Really
for having
enjoyable.
me. I really enjoyed it, and thank you for encouraging writers. You know, I just love to see people find their dream and find a path to publication.